In a previous video, we discussed what happens when somebody's self-sabotaging themselves and in a relationship and how that affects not only them, but affects the relationship. So is there a way, or can we not, stop the other person's self-sabotage? In our recent previous video, we discussed what happens when somebody self-sabotages themselves and ultimately sabotages the relationship. And in today's video, I'm asking, why is it that we can't stop someone else's personal self-sabotage and ultimately save the relationship? The first thing that I want to talk about is that we can't stop the other person's train of thought. We can't stop where that thought goes to based on their experience and their past. And because we can't stop that, we can't stop what's going through their head, right? So we don't have any control of that. So whatever someone's thinking, they have the right to think, even though it might not be based on the truth in this specific relationship. The second thing that I want to discuss is that we cannot pinpoint other people's past triggers. And even if we could, how do we show the other person that this is their trigger and that it has nothing to do with the current relationship and it has to do with previous experience? Remember, the only person that can really uncover their triggers is the person that's being triggered, right? And so ultimately, that person has to find past triggers that are creating the problems in the current relationship. They have to find it to realize that's what's triggering them to believe that this is going to happen in this relationship, or ultimately even something worse is going to take place. Thirdly, remember, you are not the one fighting this uphill battle. You're not the one that's going to end the battle, and you're not going to be the one that wins the battle. This battle can only be won by the person that's carrying this, right? And so we can be compassionate, we can be caring, we can ask them a lot of questions like, why are they feeling this way? Or why did they respond this way when you made this comment? Or why did they question our truth on something? Or why can they not believe our truth? We can ask these questions in a positive or neutral way, but ultimately they have to be able to see and how to connect the dots to understand how this fear started and how we can begin to calm the fear and begin to see the relationship in the moment and see the value that the relationship has. Another thing that I want you to think about too is that when people self-sabotage, there's a pattern, right? There's a pattern, and this pattern will continue until that person is willing to see their truth and how they ultimately got here. So if there's multiple relationships that were unhealthy or toxic in nature, what those relationships were, what was the toxicity, what happened, understanding how that took place, beginning to pull back from that, basically it's almost like, dealing with an onion, taking these layers off and saying, okay, yes, that happened in a previous relationship, and trying to deal with whether it was infidelity or lying or the person left or took off or whatever that was, and being able to deal with the fears at the core and understanding how that started, and also looking back at past relationships to see if there were patterns, because a lot of times we haven't dealt with this past relationships. We go into the new relationship and we expect everything to be great, but those past fears and the things that happen start inching into someone's mind, and they begin to believe that this is going to ultimately happen, and because they believe that, they ultimately sabotage the relationship, pushing the person further away, telling the person they don't believe them, or pushing the person to ultimately do the thing that they don't want them to do, like cheat or leave. And last but not least, I want to promote the fact that you can support them. You can support them. You can be there for them. You can help them. You can help them find a therapist, a life coach, or a minister that you think could really help them to unpack this stuff and really analyze their situation. You can ask them the positive and neutral questions to help them to explore themselves. You can be positive and be there for them, but ultimately they have to do the work. And remember, if they're not willing to do the work to understand their basis for their fear, if they're not willing to look back at their upbringing and see that possibly because dad left, there's a constant feeling that all men leave. Or in their first big relationship, their boyfriend or girlfriend cheated on them, and how just because that happened doesn't mean that everybody cheats. Those types of things are very important. And so you can support them in the fact of helping them or helping them find someone that they can talk to. But remember, if they don't get help, you will become collateral damage. You will become that, because you will get that collateral damage because they're going to sabotage themselves in the process, hurting you question you, not believing you, where you feel like you're constantly having to prove your innocence, which ultimately makes you question yourself, question the relationship, and then you begin to have self-worth and self-esteem issues, right? And this is powerful stuff that you got to think about, because if somebody is going to sabotage themselves and you're in a relationship with them, they're going to ultimately sabotage you as well. I hope this video has helped you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I really, really appreciate it. And if you like the content, give us a like here on this video. And in the comments section, let me know, was there a relationship that you had to let go of because the other person couldn't see your truth? Or didn't see that you were telling the truth, or didn't see that you really did care about them, and ultimately their fears were getting in the way? Because that's kind of sad, because I understand that we have to deal with closure in that situation, and we have to let that go, but it can be challenging because a lot of times we can see what the relationship could have been if the person would have just seen the truth in the current situation. Don't forget to live your true life.